Hey, Numi Nation. Welcome to another episode of the New Minds podcast. We have a fantastic conversation lined up for you today. Let me tell you. So my guest is Andy Najjar. He is a very multi-talented person, and there's no time in a single conversation to cover everything that he's up to or that he's accomplished. So we're going to focus on one of his particular projects that really aligns with me and with New Minds for that matter. And it's about awakening to your true self. And this is an organization, a platform that Andy has developed called The Awakened World. You can find it right there, theawakenedworld.org. And Andy has kind of a diverse background in as an executive, as a sales expert, as an entrepreneur, absolutely, and as a very purpose-driven visionary, I would describe it. I didn't pull that exact phrasing from your website, Andy, but I think it describes you quite well. And so I'm gonna let you give your own intro here in a little bit as well, but I just kind of setting the stage here that you do have the business background and the sales. I know you've started your own businesses and things like that, but I'm particularly excited about this platform that you've developed because it's about tapping into purpose, passion, and kind of like really going inward before you go outward. And I love that about your new platform. But all that being said, welcome to the New Minds podcast, Andy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben, for having me.
Anything you want to add to your intro about your background for people to know about kind of where you're coming from?
No, I mean, it really all started by, in the beginning, I grew up in a family, a sheltered family that never really helped me understand that if I had a passion, that I had the full capability of pursuing it. So from that, I took on a path of really understanding what it would really take to take on a passion and maybe even have it as a business. I don't think of it as a business with somebody that's, wearing a suit and going every day to make money. I think that is the wrong analysis about business. It's like running on a treadmill just to pay the bills. So when we really think about the word awakening, we think of it as stepping off the treadmill, and instead of doing things just to pay bills or just to set expectations of society, now you're doing things that are more in line with what you really want in life. And everything you do should actually align to that one North Star, right? Which we call purpose. And it's not about having one purpose to do one thing, and that's it. A purpose should encompass everything you do that aligns with that. So for me, like being in business, being in sales, building the awakened world is all doing one specific thing, which is really practicing my passion for business and helping other individuals pursue their passion through that type of skill.
Yeah. And so I think what you're kind of getting at here is there's this inherent conflict between the script that we're kind of presented and, no personal blaming on parents or anything, but it's like a combination of how we're raised and our culture is that we're presented this script about what are the paths before us that are options and how we should go about them and what things look like you mentioned, what it means to be in business, what it means to do this. And that does not necessarily align with kind of like that inner flame that you're talking about, which is kind of our true purpose. And so you're arguing here that by tapping into that true purpose, we can kind of have the courage to flip the script, to go off script and be aligned with it. And you also started to suggest something here I want to explore a little bit, that it's not about like, okay, I'm going to create this little hobby space to pursue my passion and kind of be my true self, but then I'll put on my costume and go do the other thing. You're suggesting that a person can live in that purpose, like the 360 view of their life can be aligned with that purpose.
Correct.
Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, and purpose is not really something you don't change. So it'll always evolve. So as you change as a person, it'll also change. But everything you do, you should wake up and feel like it's aligned with what I'm doing as a purpose, right? And we always call it integrating of your life. So whether you're hanging out with friends or talking with family or going to work or pursuing a passion or writing music, it all should align with or integrate into one purpose or one alignment of a direction. Because then you'll feel like you're not imbalanced, you're not trying to juggle, you're not having that stress of, if I don't do this, I'm missing out on this. It's like everything you do is actually fulfilling that one direction, right? And you'll see that a lot of people will have different moments in their life that will trigger that feeling of, where do I go from here? Or I have to make a decision, right or left. And that's when they'll start noticing that their life is not aligned. Like for me, and I'm writing about that in the book, which is called the 10 Life Awakenings, which are 10 lessons that I think everybody should go through to awaken their true self. It happened when I was in college. Like I was starting to want to go to college. I got accepted, and I had to make a decision of, what career choice do I make? And my parents gave me two options that they thought were the best solution. You know, my dad wanted me to be an engineer because he's an engineer. And my mom, that's a biology teacher, said, I want you to be a doctor. So I had a choice of engineer or doctor. But none of those really, you know, fit what I wanted to do. I said that I can't see myself in any of those directions. And it's not that I chose business because I wanted to be a businessman or I wanted to be in business. I thought business is just so general that it's not going to put any walls or constraints on me, that I can just go in any direction that I want to flow in. And that's what I ended up choosing. But every student or every person that is going through that is going to experience that and going to say, I need to make a choice. And that choice is tricky, because if you don't know what your purpose is or how to be in line with that, you're going to end up making a decision based on society or expectations, or what's a good job overall, or what does success really look like. And it deviates what the true purpose should be, which is pursuing passion and making an impact in the world.
Yeah. So the Awakened World platform has a series of workshops that are designed to help people tap into that. Like you had kind of a spontaneous awakening in college that you mentioned. That was maybe probably not your first. You probably had micro awakenings along the way that led to that. But that was seems like that was a major moment for you, a turning point to kind of like spin you towards this kind of new direction, off script, but more aligned to your purpose. Where does one start? Like what's, if you want to walk us through a little bit of the anatomy of one of the workshops that you run, like where does one start? If they feel lost, they feel out of sync, they don't feel aligned with purpose, like what's the starting point? How can you start to look inward and say, you know, what is my purpose?
Yeah. So I always explain like finding purpose or really awakening to your true self as, you know, climbing a ladder or climbing the stairs. So it's not like I have one moment and it's done. I have that full knowledge now. It's really a series of steps, right? So for me, it started when I wanted to make that decision, but then every, you know, few years or every few months, I would, you know, encounter a new lesson or a new deeper awakening that helped me even understand that further, right? Before I was able to create the content. But there's a few things that we always think about, you know, when we're talking about purpose or talking about, you know, our courses that we do. One is really integrating a few different aspects, like understanding that what's the difference between what I'm good at and what I love. And, you know, a lot of people just really say, okay, what I love is my purpose. But for example, if you love music, but you only do it for you, I don't feel like that's a purpose, because it should impact more than you. It should align with the world. It should help the balance of the world. It could make a difference. And today, a lot of millennials are starting to see that, right? And then younger generations are going to be blessed to even have that knowledge, because their parents are going to be, you know, understanding of what does that look like. It's not about the money. It's not about, you know, I just want to focus on making a success. What does that really mean? Because there's a lot of people that I coach and mentor that, you know, are millionaires, but they still feel like don't have an answer to what's next, or they don't have that burning fire that wakes them up and say, I'm really excited about being in life, right? So we merge those aspects. We merge what you love with what you are good at, with what the world needs, right? And then also understanding, you know, once we have those merges, is finding what's the one area that really brings that shining light that includes all of them. And the best example that I always, you know, mention is, you know, think about you being, you know, either a grandfather or grandmother sitting on a porch, you know, about, you know, 50 years from now, right? And your granddaughter comes to you or grandson comes to you and says, hey, grandma or grandpa, what did you do in this world?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have an answer to just say what you did, what was that impact? Then what's the whole reasoning of actually living, right? So we want to make sure that we find that answer and we actually pursued it. Otherwise, we'll just say what if, and we live a life of what if. And that's, I feel like, you taking your life and throwing it away because you didn't pursue the things that have always been burning within you. You didn't align it with what your inner self is saying. And you can align it with a lot of things. You can align it with passion, with religion, with knowledge, with philosophy. It's not limiting in any way. It just encompasses all of that in one place.
Yeah, I love that. Now, there's a framework that I use that I've borrowed from Japanese culture called Ikki Guy. And it's exactly what you're describing, Andy. It's this thought that each of us has an essence, a purpose that we have. Our life mission is to kind of find and align with it. And it has to do with where all these factors come together. Like you said, yes, I'm passionate about it. Yes, I'm good at it. But also, yes, the world needs it. Right? It fills a niche in the world, or it serves the world in some way. And also, there's also another component, which is I can make a living from it. And I think that's where your business background is very helpful as well, because you can help people sort of leverage these other factors into a viable way to make a living. And now I want to reflect personally for a moment. So, because you mentioned like how the purpose evolves and changes, right? And it takes some deep work. Like this isn't kind of like a snap of the finger thing. Like it's just been sitting there. From my experience, I went through a process with you actually several years ago, kind of a designing your life sort of, process to dig down and develop a life purpose statement. And I went through that with you several years ago, and it was useful. And I produced kind of like an answer for myself that was kind of correct, but it didn't have that snap factor for me. Like I'm not quite there. So then a couple of years later, I went through it again at a conference that we both attended. Actually, the Hive organization has an annual conference, and one of their things is this purpose statement process, right? And I went through it again and produced kind of a purpose statement that the words were all right. Like, as in terms of like a sentence and the phrasing and the concepts were all right, but it still wasn't right here. And so then I went back to the same conference the next year and I told myself, okay, for some reason, there's part of me still too stuck to the script. I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to abandon all expectations and just dive deep into this process. And that's the year that I finally came out with a purpose statement that was like, and it's hard to explain, but when you find it, you feel it. You have to cut through the words. You have to cut through some noise, and you just kind of light up when you find it. You agree?
Yes, and absolutely. And what we usually see is people that actually go through our content and courses and become part of our community. Those people all are aligned from a similar aspect. So you'll notice when you have a conversation with an individual, you're having a very interesting, passionate conversation versus when you talk to individuals that have not taken the time to work on themselves in that area. They're just really usually stressed, tired of the grind, thinking about like, how do I get out of this norm? And when you do have purpose, you feel like no matter what they're doing, they're just excited and passionate about life. And it just creates a whole new way of living. And that's, what we're trying to do is really help individuals, young entrepreneurs, children. We even do work in the Middle East and with Native Americans to help individuals to say, just because of what we saw in life, that's not all of it. There's more to it. And we need to open their eyes to say, what else is there? And we help them find that. And we do it through one-on-one coaching. We do it through seminars. We usually have anywhere between 500 people to 100 people attend our seminars. And then we also do it through speaking arrangements. So we want to make sure that we get the message out. We have people that are, listening to that. And then, the book will help with that, which is coming out next year about, people can even download the book on Amazon, be able to take that lesson and go through some of those exercises to help start that process.
Yeah. So to access one of the seminars that you're talking about or the one-on-one coaching, theawakenedworld.org is the place to go for that information. Correct?
Absolutely. We publish them. They're in different cities. You can also request one. So if you don't have one in your city and you want to have one put put on, we can do that together. So we're more than willing to do that. We're all about getting the message out. So we operate as a for-profit, but we're also doing nonprofit work. So for certain individuals that can't afford the content, we try to find ways to actually give that content to them without having to charge those individuals, and really help them develop what we found out so far.
And that's related to some of the work you're doing with Native Americans and in the Middle East. That's kind of like the philanthropic arm of Awakened World, is kind of, leveraging some of the traction from the other seminars to make those offerings available to those communities.
Absolutely. We're just adding a new way of education to it, right? We've mastered how to learn about science and technology and innovation, but without, I think, being truly awakened to who you are as an individual, it's not really giving you that full knowledge and the full scope. So that way you can actually look at things in a different light and say, how does this really impact the world? And do I love it? And what can I do to pursue it? And how can I merge all of these things into one?
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk a little bit more, if you don't mind, about the book, not necessarily as a book, but the content, the 10 life awakenings. Now that's super intriguing. And I know I'm not the only one who wants to hear a little bit more about, maybe you don't have to list all 10, but can you dig a little bit into a couple of the awakenings that you talk about in the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of them, so we have, we already talked about purpose, but there's other lessons that I think are just as important. Love is a big one. We're talking about internal self-love, right? So a lot of people go out of their way to serve other people and help their boss or their parents, but they forget to take care of themselves. Looking at, what do I want out of life, right? What helps me, individual, grow? And self-love is all about taking care of you. If you have those burning questions, pursuing them, finding answers, right, which helps you kind of feel more balanced as an individual. After love, that leads into a few other lessons. The lesson of forgiveness, how to forgive yourself for all the things that we've went through in life, how to forgive previous experiences or things that we've learned in childhood that make us feel free, because we all have gone through something. It's really interesting. Like when we go through these exercises with forgiveness, some people will talk about some of the things they went through, and you're like, whoa, like they had a really hard life. But once you start sharing in that room, you'll find everybody has a hard life. Everybody went through that lesson that you'll feel like really scarred me or made me who I am. But that lesson should help us to move forward, not to hold us back. And if we're always chained to it or not able to release that, then we don't feel like we're free again. So we'll work with that. We work with, understanding relationships, what type of relationship look like between our circle, our friends, family, loved ones, right? We talk about also, people in different society always think about, family different ways, right? So there's so much pressure on, young adults on, get married, have children. But a lot of times they don't know the why. Like, why would we want to do that, right? What's the reasoning behind it? Is it because our parents are asking us? Is it because society will look at us as, we didn't succeed if we didn't get married or have children? And there's all that pressure that we want to release. So, talking about those concepts, understanding them further. So all of that is part of the book, and there's 10 different ones that we'll go through.
Yeah, it's almost like these are rites of passage in a way, or these events and turning points or aspects of life that we all experience. But what you're doing is kind of coaching people how to have a healthy relationship and healthy transition through them. Does that sound correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are afraid to ask, like one of the biggest things I always say is, people are afraid of asking for mentorship, right? And it took me a lot to develop a lot of, courage and be able to reach out to people and say, I want your help, or whatever, I want to learn. And, that is a big help, because people that actually have knowledge and have true knowledge are more willing to give it out than people that say no. So if whoever reaching out and saying no, it's because they don't have a lot of knowledge and they try to not give it out because they want to keep it to themselves. But the true people that actually have that knowledge and have the ability to actually get to the deeper knowledge and self have the passion of actually giving back that out because it's not their knowledge. They
Yeah.
got it from life experiences. It's not theirs to own. And it's time to give that forward so that everybody could share and understand what they've learned so far.
I love that insight. It's like the true higher wisdom belongs to no one. And so
Correct.
there's not that sense of like clinging to it. It's like this was meant. This is everyone's property. And it's my job to pass it
Absolutely.
on or to be a torch for it. I love that insight.
And you
So
only own it once you give it out.
there you go. I love that. Yeah. So what I want to do, I want to kind of like I'm out, you know me, I'm 100% all into this, but I want to present a point of view that would be maybe kind of considered a skeptic's point of view and just see how you reply to it, how you address it. So
Sure.
what about the attitude out there that like, yeah, you know what, all this purpose stuff and this passion stuff, it's all feel good, self-help stuff, but the world needs the wheels to turn. We need to build the bridges. We need people doing the grunt work. We can't have everybody walking around, in their bliss all day. How do you answer that kind of attitude? I exaggerated it, of course, but how do you address that? Like, why do every single one of us need to tap into our true self?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So, I'd like to even think about this in different areas. So, what you're mentioning is, whether there's a concrete analysis of, science or proven, and it is like, for example, emotional intelligence plays such an important part, and it's measurable, and we know it exists, right? It's a different type of intelligence that ties into what we're talking about. Now, the other thing is, it's really hard to start looking at the deeper self if you are in a point of survival. So if you feel like you can't have food on the table, you can't have shelter, you can't have health, it's really hard to start thinking about purpose because you're so ingrained in that pain, right?
Right.
So that is not taking away that, purpose is for everybody. Everybody should find purpose, but it comes after the fact that you can find the needs for survival. So when you're talking about third world countries or refugees, it's really hard for us to work with them sometimes if they don't even have the answers to those three things. So we usually like to partner with nonprofits or organizations that have provided those three necessities first to them. And once they feel like they are okay and they can move forward, now it's taking and leveling up their life to the next level. So what you're explaining is people that sometimes may be feeling that. And if they're feeling that, they need to have answers to that first.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's another level on top of that is how to build from there.
Wonderful. Yeah, great answer. I love how you brought in EQ, and I love how you acknowledge, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is another way to put it. Like you said, like we've got shelter, safety, security, and then we kind of peak up here at self-actualization, but we got to build the foundation first. And you acknowledge that, which I really love. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, we're all physical beings first. So
yeah, exactly. So if people want to stay tuned in and they want to know when this book is going to be released and how to get it, is there a mailing list that we can get on or social media? What's the best way to stay tuned in?
Absolutely. So we have a Facebook that you can join. We also have a Facebook group if you'd like to be part of those conversations and courses. We do some free stuff on the book in the group, and then you can register on our website. So you can either send an email into our website, or if you go to the blog section, there is the ability to give us your email, and we can kind of send you some updates. You can get content regularly, whether it's monthly blogs or topics or conversations like this that we share. So if you'd like to stay in tune and learn what's coming and even do that, let us know. And if you would like to donate to our organization for the book or for other students to actually be able to do this work, reach out to me directly. You can reach me at info@theawakenedworld.org. And happy to kind of look at ways of how do we make this work more impactful around the world.
And I'm assuming you're open to potential collaborations with other entrepreneurs or nonprofits or organizations as well.
Absolutely. We're all about partnering. So if we can find other organizations that want to do a better impact, or they have a course that aligns with what we do, we just add another twist to it and bring that content to them. We're more than happy to do that. And that's usually the way that you can get more of an impact. Each one has their own business and target market, and we can really spread throughout that. So we're more than happy to do that.
Beautiful. So, I want to thank you, Andy, for coming on today. It was a fascinating conversation, really aligned with my own personal passion and mission and purpose. So it was really a privilege to chat with you about this. I can't wait to see it evolve. I can't wait to see the book get released in the coming months. And I hope we can have another chat in the future, maybe when the book's released or maybe before.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben, for having me. And I'm always excited with what you're doing and what you're putting out to the world as well, and how to help children around the world really tap into a higher standard of education. So it's an honor to be part of this conversation, and I'm always excited about what you're up to as well.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. Stay safe and stay inspired for everybody.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Take care.
And thank you, New Minds Nation, for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. We are now in a weekly format, so tune in every week for a fresh conversation. Take care and stay safe.